Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
It's hot across San Diego County, or at least most of the county. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. They're called the dog days of summer, but the temperature and the impact on people very much depends on where you live. More from KPBS reporter John Carroll.
The National Weather Service says the marine layer, nature's air conditioning, won't be of much help through the weekend. Temperatures are going to rise no matter where you live.
It puts San Diego residents into a stressful situation.
Tessa Tinkler is the director of research at USD's Nonprofit Institute. The organization researches quality of life issues in the region and then tries to help nonprofit organizations working to solve those issues. In this case, Tinkler is mainly talking about people who live south of Interstate 8.
In particular, those in the South Bay, where they could find relief from the heat waves and being able to go to the beach, and yet they don't want to risk getting sick from unhealthy beach water.
From Borderfield State Park right up to Coronado, the beaches may be open, but getting into the water, polluted by sewage flowing up from Tijuana, can make folks very sick. And there's another divide when it comes to our weather this summer. It seemed to me and a lot of my colleagues in the newsroom that it is staying cooler longer into the season along the coastal plain than it is out to the east. Turns out, it's not our imagination.
It's ultimately due to the marine layers still kind of hanging around in the mornings, which ultimately is also due to the ocean temperatures still running a few degrees cooler than normal.
National Weather Service meteorologist Brian Adams says the reason the ocean water is cooler than normal in mid-July can be traced back to our very wet winter.
The big body of water, as the Pacific Ocean is really like a big heat sink, so it holds on to that cooler temperature a lot longer than the air above it does.
Adams says a big dome of high pressure over the southwest will expand westward into early next week, bringing higher temperatures and more humid conditions for all of us. But just remember how so many of us couldn't wait for the seemingly never-ending May gray and June gloom to clear out. Well, here we are. John Carroll, KPBS News.
The heat continues to be the big story, and notice now where there are excessive heat warnings. He's stretching all the way out through Friday. Again, areas impacted toward Borrego Springs, and also as we work our way toward Julia to Pine Valley, especially elevations down below 5,000 feet. It's the intensity, the longevity of the heat that can be quite dangerous, so make sure you're taking proper precautions to find ways to stay cool. Much more coming up in your forecast, but I can tell you tomorrow is going to be another scorcher. Borrego Springs up to 112. More ahead.
The San Diego City Council voted unanimously today to push back a fast-approaching deadline for reviewing the city's surveillance technology. KPBS reporter Scott Rodd has more.
Last August, the City Council passed an ordinance aimed at creating more transparency around drones, DNA databases, and other surveillance tools. It set a one-year deadline for the city to identify existing surveillance technologies, hold community meetings, and ultimately get City Council approval for their continued use by the police and other city departments. Now the city has extended that deadline by 3 years. Council members expressed concern that essential services could be disrupted if existing technologies didn't get approved in time. Here's Councilmember Marnie Von Wilpert.
And so we want to make sure that we are promoting transparency and accountability, but also not stopping the city operations we need to do every day.
Mayor Todd Gloria asked the City Council to take up the amendments. He originally proposed eliminating the review deadline altogether, but instead changed it to a 3-year extension after pushback from privacy advocates. The city has so far identified hundreds of technologies subject to review. However, the proposal approved by the City Council narrows the definition of a surveillance technology, which could weed out on controversial items like email newsletter software. Scott Rodd, KPBS News.
A report recommending ways to curb gun violence in our county has stalled for now. The San Diego County Board of Supervisors deadlocked on a vote to advance the recommendations today. The study looked at data from 2017 to 2021 and found that homicide rates increased by 56% during that time period. It also found rates were 10 times higher for black residents than for white ones. And cities like Lemon Grove, National City, and Vista had the most homicides in that time period.
It's a matter of reaching down deep into the community and getting contact with the people who can do something about it. And I'm hoping that this report is just a beginning of what we need to do to make our community safe.
The report offered possible solutions to gun violence, including gun lock distribution programs, community outreach, and more mental health counseling. The county clerk says the board may consider formally approving the report at a future meeting. It's been 1 year since CSU ordered a system-wide audit of the Title IX process at all 23 campuses, including San Diego State. KPBS reporter Alexander Nguyen breaks down the results and the recommendations.
The audit happened at the time when San Diego State was embroiled in a high-profile incident of its own. Several football players were accused of raping a teenage girl at a house party off campus. This week, SDSU got the audit report. In the 61-page report, the law firm Cozen O'Connor says SDSU Center for the Prevention of Harassment and Discrimination lacks the infrastructure required and is under-resourced to carry out all of its functions. The center is responsible for responding to Title IX violations, including sexual assault and harassment.
There wasn't much there that we didn't already know.
Christy Heskela is a sexual assault survivor advocate at the law firm Hequist and Egg.
They mentioned that the people that work there don't necessarily understand what the victim advocate has to offer, what support resources they have to offer for the students. And I find that very common.
The lack of resources was cited in part as the reason for the trust gap among students. The report noted at the time of the audit, the school was under public scrutiny for its handling of the sexual assault allegations involving the football team. Leslie Gomez, one of the auditors at Cozen O'Connor, said the lack of resources often leads to inferences of institutional bias or the need to protect the institution instead of the victim.
And maybe to say that more concisely, where there was a gap between the institution's commitment to do the right thing and their ability to carry it out because of resources, that gap got filled by negative inference.
The report says SDSU should do more to increase awareness of what CPHD does and the resources available. Gomez says the issue isn't unique to SDSU, but a part of a pattern across the entire CSU system. Gina Maisto-Smith, another auditor at Cozen O'Connor, said the complex and dense Title IX reporting process also has a negative effect on assault survivors.
It necessarily takes time, and the impact of the time on those individuals was a very difficult thing to hear over and over again.
And it will take time to resolve the resource issue. SDSU said it has hired a compliance specialist and is in the process of hiring another survivor advocate. The school has convened a team to review the report's recommendations. Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
KPBS is a broadcast service of San Diego State University. A political fight is brewing over the typically bipartisan annual defense spending bill. As KPBS military reporter Andrew Dyer explains, San Diego Democratic lawmakers say Republicans are playing politics with national security.
The bill is passed without objection, and motion to reconsider this is laid on the table.
A nearly $900 billion annual defense bill passed the House last week by a razor-thin partisan margin, with 4 Democrats voting for and 4 Republicans voting against. The bill has been historically bipartisan, but several Republican amendments left most Democrats voting against it. Amendments included gutting Pentagon diversity initiatives, adding language to limit transgender health care for service members, and repealing travel reimbursements for abortion care that began after the repeal of Roe v. Wade.
the majority of Americans, including the majority of Republicans, think service members should be able to get health care, think that they should be able to travel if they need to get health care, and understand that joining the military doesn't mean you should have less rights than if you're a civilian.
Democrat Sarah Jacobs of San Diego sits on the House Armed Services Committee and says politically motivated amendments upended bipartisan committee negotiations and jeopardize initiatives that would help local service members, such as a child care center expansion at Naval Base Point Loma.
I worked to create a bipartisan coalition to address quality of life issues for families in San Diego because I knew it was important to make sure that we had support from both sides of the aisle to be able to get them done.
Jacobs joined fellow San Diego Democrats Scott Peters, Juan Vargas, and Mike Levin in voting against the bill. San Diego Republican Darrell Issa voted in favor. The Senate version of the spending bill is expected to pass the democratically controlled Senate this week without those Republican amendments. It will then be up to leaders in both chambers to reconcile the bill, with negotiations expected to stretch into the fall. Andrew Dyer, KPBS News.
An ordinance that would ban homeless encampments in the city of Poway goes up for a vote today. The city council first brought up the idea in June, but there was no official vote on the measure. A second reading is expected today. Under the ordinance, sheriff's deputies would be allowed to clear out encampments in public or city-owned areas if shelters are available anywhere in the county. Advocates say even if beds are available, the nearest shelter is 15 miles away.
Now we're criminalizing them for sleeping on the street when literally it's almost impossible for them to get from where they are to the shelter availability.
Campers would be given 24 hours to move out. Councilmember Brian Pepin drafted the ordinance, and if passed, the law would go into effect on August 16th. Thousands of people will soon fill the streets of downtown for San Diego Comic-Con, and tomorrow is preview night. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando has been attending Comic-Con for almost 50 years. Taking her cue from pop culture, she offers you this geeky list of top 10 survival tips to make the most of your con experience.
Number 1. Badges. You need a badge for Comic-Con, so keep it with you at all times. Remember to always both tap in and out at the convention center, or you may not be able to re-enter. If you have any problems, go to the RFID badge help desk. And badge sharing is not allowed. 2, check out the official website.
This is the way.
This is the way.
Comic-Con puts a lot of work into its website and packs it with information. You can explore the exhibit floor, check out who will be in Artist Alley, and scope out all the programming. And important for this year, there's a list of canceled panels reflecting the impact of the writers and actors' strikes.
I have spoken.
3, transportation.
Bridge, transporter operational, but this jury rigging won't last for long. He's got to come off now.
Getting back and forth from the con can be a challenge. Parking is expensive and hard to find, so consider using the trolley or the Comic-Con shuttles that are free with your badge. And learn the lay of the land so you don't waste time getting lost. And without a transporter, comfortable shoes are a must. 4, pack a survival kit.
Survival kit contents check.
Water, snacks, caffeine, chocolate, battery chargers, jacket, check. Deodorant, if you want to be considerate of others. Pretend you're heading out on a mission and don't know how long you'll be gone. 5, make a plan.
There's one more thing we need to complete the plan. That guy's eye.
No, you don't actually need that guy's eye, but you will benefit from some kind of plan, whether it's a highly detailed strategy or just a casual idea to hit the exhibit floor. But decide how you want to tackle the con and what's important to you. And figure out the geography. You cannot go from the Bayfront Hilton to Hall A in 5 minutes. Understand that it's not just a question of distance, but what stands between you and your destination. 6, be flexible.
Dr. Adapt and improve.
Heed Monty Python's advice and be ready to pivot. If you get shut out of a panel, don't let that ruin your day. Instead, walk into a random panel and maybe you'll discover something new. Or check out the Comic-Con International Independent Film Festival and chill out watching a pop culture-inspired film. 7, lines do not have to be a bad thing.
Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Attendees form lifelong friendships with people they meet in line. So if you're stuck waiting for something, chat with the geeky fan standing next to you, because a beautiful friendship might lie ahead. 8, express yourself.
Cool Spidey outfit. Thanks.
Wear a t-shirt or a costume showing your fandom. Comic-Con is the best place to celebrate what you love and to find others who share your passion. 9, step out of your comfort zone.
Mr. Bilbo, where are you off to? I'm going on an adventure.
Explore. Seek out something new. If you don't know what an inker or a letterer does, then go to a panel about them. And 10, support an independent artist or publisher.
Hi, I'm Leela Lee. I'm the cartoonist of Angry Little Girls, which is a weekly comic strip.
Hey guys, I'm Lenny Romero. I am an independent artist that travels the country selling art at different shows.
Consider hitting the floor for a day or even an hour and spend some time and money in Artist Alley or small press. There are treasures out there waiting to be discovered, and you can feel great knowing you're supporting independent creators. And finally,
Rule number 32. Enjoy the little things.
That's right. Just remember to have fun, no matter how many zombies might be chasing you. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
And those are some great tips there. We are covering all things Comic-Con at kpbs.org. You just click on the banner that you find on our homepage, and you'll find everything from panel recommendations to a list of off-site events that don't require a badge. And Comic-Con is not only a time to celebrate your favorite heroes, but you can become one too. San Diego Blood Bank's longest-running blood drive returns for its 47th year. Donation areas will be at the Manchester Hyatt Hotel and San Diego Blood Bank Donation Centers. You can make an appointment online or in person. Donors will receive a free Guardians of the Galaxy t-shirt and a chance to win some other prizes. The drive runs tomorrow through Sunday. Hollywood actors and writers are still striking against major studios. The negotiating team for Actors Union SAG-AFTRA say studios, quote, wouldn't meaningfully engage on the most critical issues. SAG-AFTRA's core demands include increased wages, streaming royalties, health and retirement benefits. The Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers says that they offered the union a package worth more than $1 billion in wage increases, pension and health contributions. Russia's decision to pull out of a deal allowing for the export of grain from Ukraine shocked global markets this week. The collapse of the agreement threatens to increase the cost of food, and millions worldwide could see price increases. Gloria Pasmino explains what this means for the average American.
As the fighting continues in Ukraine, Russian President Vladimir Putin announcing his decision to withdraw from a deal brokered by the UN and Turkey to allow grain exports from Ukraine through the Black Sea.
What Russia is doing now is striking at the political stability of many countries.
Ukraine is known as Europe's breadbasket, and it accounts for 10% of the world wheat market.
Ukraine is one of the major grain producers in the world, and countries in Africa and the Middle East in particular depend on receiving that grain.
The move sparking outrage.
It's unacceptable to hold hostage the hungriest people in the world because of some power play and aggression carried out by Moscow.
And dire warnings.
Hundreds of millions of people face hunger, and consumers are confronting a global cost of living crisis, and they will pay the price.
Here in the U.S., experts say people are largely shielded from the direct impact of higher grain prices due to strong domestic production. But the economy is not immune.
The U.S. is looking relatively strong on a global basis, but I do think that some of these sort of shocks, the global supply chain shocks, could continue to reverberate and create that uncertainty.
While inflation is cooling overall, energy and food prices still remain stubbornly high, and the U.S. Federal Reserve is poised to hike interest rates yet again. In New York, I'm Gloria Pasmino reporting.
Millions of Americans are under heat advisories as excessive heat sweeps across the South. The National Weather Service says some areas will see some triple-digit heat. Mike Valerio looks at how people are trying to stay cool.
Scorching temperatures sweeping across the country. More than 65 million Americans under heat alerts from coast to coast. Some areas seeing triple-digit heat.
It's just harder to breathe, like, without the moisture in the air. Do what you can, stay hydrated.
In Phoenix, Arizona, temperatures reached at least 110 degrees for the 18th consecutive day. So far this year, the county's recorded 12 confirmed heat-related deaths. The heat is being blamed in the death of a 73-year-old man who was simply out for a bike ride.
We are saddened by the loss of a member of our community to this apparent heat-related death.
Phoenix ER doctor Frank Lavecchio says he's also seeing a rise in heat-related illnesses.
This is the worst with regard to the amount of patients, the amount of flow. We try to cool them down as fast as possible.
Health officials are warning people to stay indoors, but for some, like those experiencing homelessness, that is not an option. Crews were handing out water to the homeless to keep them cool.
No clouds, direct sunlight, and that combination really is deadly.
The heat streak showing no signs of ending soon. The National Weather Service warning the heat is expected to last for the next several days. In Phoenix, Mike Valerio, KPBS News.
Heat, and more heat on the way as we talk about more of those numbers running above the historical average. In some cases, substantially 5, 10, even close to 12 degrees. And that's a lot of margin considering we are in the month of July. We'll talk about the coast where there can be some immediate coastal clouds offering some sort of relief and chances for some change into the weekend. We'll talk about that just ahead here as well. All right, the extensive nature of those heat alerts, and these are excessive heat warnings, a very serious type of heat coming out, especially throughout the deserts, including Borrego Springs. But as we talk about some of those far interior valleys and the mountains down below 5,000 feet, 4,500 feet, quite intense heat coming up. And these alerts go all the way now through Friday. All the areas you see in the red. Later on tonight, it's going to take some time. Temperatures will settle down into the 80s around Borrego Springs. Mount Laguna, look at that, only dropping down close to 70 degrees. And into the mid-60s around Oceanside and into Chula Vista. We'll top out in the 70s there as we go into tomorrow. So some coastal clouds helping out to some degree. Interior valleys, and notice Ramona topping out at 90. Borrego Springs back into the triple digits. Hey, Mount Laguna climbing close to 90 degrees. That is significant. And this type of heat, due to the longevity, the intensity, it's very important to stay hydrated with water. Check on the elderly, the pets, your friends, family members, making sure they're staying cool, the air conditioning if at all possible. We're talking about even those numbers climbing back a bit here toward the coast as we work our way toward the late week. And numbers here back into the mid-80s. Meanwhile, interior valleys, we're going to stay put in the 90s. Some indications are we could start to see that heat peaking here late week into the weekend. And as we work our way into the mountainous terrain, again, 87 way up there as we work our way into Wednesday. Core the heat again into the deserts, and look at some of these numbers here as we work our way through Friday in the 1-teens. Could start to see the numbers dropping a bit as we head our way into Saturday and also into Sunday. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Justin Pavic.
Rady Children's Hospital is hosting a Comic-Con panel on how its doctors are using 3D printing and virtual reality to help with the most complex surgeries. KPBS health reporter Matt Hoffman takes us to the lab where the technology is growing, thanks in part to video games.
You can see it right there, and I can start to move it around.
Yeah, it feels like a video game.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely has like video game aspects to it.
In this Rady Children's Hospital lab, video game technology is the foundation for creating virtual models to help surgeons perform complex operations, like heart procedures, transplants, and other surgeries involving the brain or spinal cord.
We wanted to have a tool that would be easy for them to use without needing to have all this additional training, so that way they can easily open up these models, look at them, and do everything that they need to get a good sense of what they need to do to help their patient.
Param Golami is a research engineer at Rady's. Before this, he was a video game developer. He says any body part or bone can be turned into a 3D model using a CT scan or MRI, like this heart.
Let's say you want to hide the left ventricle, you can do that here. Or if you want to make something kind of semi-transparent, you can adjust the slider here.
Golami says his work is meaningful because it impacts patients in positive ways. He remembers the first time observing a surgery using the technology.
And they had a reconstruction of the heart open, and it was sort of surreal to see that, of like, oh man, this thing that I created is having a material impact on people. I can see that in a way, it's helping make someone's life better.
Rady's engineers are showcasing how they're using virtual reality and 3D printing during a panel this Saturday at Comic-Con.
It's incredible how much medical software, medical technology has not really incorporated all these video game-like features, and that would just help our surgeons.
Justin Ryan leads the growing team at the Rady's Innovation Lab. He says the technology is rapidly changing.
We were able to do 3D prints, decades ago, and that would be a plastic model that was rigid, single color, but now we can do materials that have flexibility. So we can 3D print a heart that is flexible. Our surgeons can actually cut into it, do an entire mock operation on it.
Some of the 3D printers in the lab cost up to $300,000. The imaging process is something Ryan says insurance doesn't reimburse the hospital for, but he says improving patient outcomes is a top priority.
This patient's sutures fused very early on. So a model like this helps our plastic surgeons understand exactly where they're going to cut and how they're going to open it.
The models can even be shown to patients and their families so that they better understand what's wrong and how it will be fixed in surgery.
We have this ideal in medicine of informed consent, but how can you really achieve that if they don't understand these complex medical jargon? So one way is to create a visual aid like this.
Ryan says the need for virtual models in the health space is growing, and he's excited to share more about his work with a Comic-Con audience.
In the near future, we're going to be doing more device design development, all internally. We'll be doing more 3D modeling, more virtual reality, all utilizing this really kind of nerdy technology that we'll showcase at Comic-Con.
And maybe even inspire the next generation of biomedical engineers. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Some great stuff there, and you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.